We've come to the end of Book 1. Book 1 is concerned with Samadhi, and Book 2 is concerned with practice, Sadhana. Spiritual practice begins with Samadhi. We tend to think of Samadhi as being the goal, what we're striving towards, what we're trying to purify our mind in order to attain. But this is getting things the wrong way round. This is why Patanjali begins with Samadhi. Samadhi is the natural state of our own awareness, and this state is clouded, it's obfuscated by the turbulence of our thoughts and emotions, what I've described as the vortices of the mind-heart. They suck awareness into them. So Book 1 was very much concerned with dealing with these tendencies which suck awareness into them. And once we can navigate through these tendencies, once we can dissolve them, once we can bypass them, then what we've got is Samadhi. What we've got is the realization of the nature of the awareness by which you're hearing this. Our everyday, ordinary awareness. And once we realize this, the work begins, the work of remaining established in this realization, or at least of developing the ability to come back to it more and more often, no matter what is going on in the world, no matter what our mood. Samadhi is still in sight. And this is summed up in the first sutra of Book 2. The practice of yoga consists of non-indulgence, self-inquiry, and directing the attention to the supreme identity. Now, there are quite a few terms here which have very traditional meanings. And if you're familiar with other translations of the Yoga Sutras, you might notice a slight contrast here to what you might expect. So first of all, the practice of yoga. In Sanskrit this is called Kriya Yoga, the practice of yoga. It's what you do. It's actually what you actually do to come back to Samadhi. It's basically enlightenment practice. Samadhi is enlightenment. And there are three things here that Patanjali tells us that this practice consists of. The first one is non-indulgence. Now, the word in Sanskrit here is tapas. Tapas. This is a very loaded term, tapas. It's often translated as austerity. And this has a whole raft of associations to do with self-flagellation, the mortification of the flesh and all the rest of it. We must be very, very careful not to go down that path. Within the context of enlightenment practice, tapas is not giving in to our moods, not automatically going with our comfort zone. This is actually the challenge. This is the essential spiritual challenge. Not going with our moods, not always searching for our comfort space. When you don't do that, when you don't give in to your inclination for comfort, it's uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable. Just try fasting for a day, for example. If food's a big thing for you, if you get a lot of comfort from eating food, if you've got to have your cup of coffee in the morning, what's it like not to have your cup of coffee in the morning? What's it like to fast? You don't even have to artificially impose these things on you. You've just got to look at your everyday patterns. Notice the ones which are self-indulgent and not give in to them. Even the contemplation of not giving in to them might be more than you can accomplish. So this is why I've called it non-indulgence. It's non-self-indulgence. If we indulge ourselves, we're indulging our moods. And we're lost. We're spiritually lost at that point. So we must become very aware of our moods and our inclination to go with them. This is a far greater discipline than any kind of flagellation or mortification. To actually go against your own moods requires the greatest of efforts, and it requires incredible honesty and integrity. So this is the first part of yoga practice, not giving in to our moods. The moods tend to want something out there, or it could be just going into a nice little reverie, absenting ourselves into a reverie. So the second thing we have to do, once we've caught the beginning of a mood coming on, and we've realized we have the option of not going with it, then we must practice self-inquiry. And the word here is svadhyaya, self-study. You can take this on a psychological level if you wish, as a preliminary stage, although be careful you don't get trapped in that. What we're really looking at here is the nature of ourself, the nature of our own awareness. And to be completely specific here, it's the nature of your own attention. It's turning your attention to itself, to your own awareness. This awareness has no colouring. This awareness by which you're hearing this, or seeing this, or thinking about something else. This is what we need to look towards. We turn our attention to that awareness. And this is, in essence, the supreme identity. Now, the word we've got here is Ishvara. And in traditional translations, you'll see this translated as Lord or God even. Now again, the words Lord and God, especially in the English language, have a huge amount of baggage which we're just going to chuck right out the window. If you're happy with that translation, by all means go with it and make of it what you will. But let's explore what's meant by Ishvara. In Hinduism, the absolute is Brahman. The absolute, we can't really say anything about it. But Hinduism is a very devotional religion, and many Hindus have their own particular deity, their own particular favourite deity, and that might be enough for them, although the more spiritually inclined might realise that that deity is an aspect of the absolute, and it might be a way of approaching the absolute. But we'll leave all that aside for now. I'm going to assume you're not a theist, or you're not particularly comfortable with that sort of thing. And the reason I'm doing that is not just to cater to a particular prejudice, because my whole approach to Patanjali here is that this is not a speculative work. It's not a conceptual work. It's not a philosophical work. It's a wisdom text. And the whole point of a wisdom text is not to convey information. It's not to convey concepts. It's to point us to our true self, our true identity. So what is Ishvara? Is Ishvara Brahman? Or is Ishvara Brahma, the creator God? Again, we're looking for something in our immediate experience. Ishvara is what gave rise to everything and then entered into it. This is the distinction between Ishvara and Brahman, the Absolute. Ishvara went into its creation. It identified with it. This should be familiar now. What I'm talking about should be familiar. We're talking about awareness again. Awareness is that by which everything becomes manifest, and then what happens in the form of the attention, it identifies with what it's aware of. So if I'm aware of this cup, I focus my attention on it, and all that's left is the cup. There isn't the cup and my attention, there is just the cup. The attention has identified with the cup. This is what the attention does. This is the dynamic of Ishvara. So in spiritual practice, once we're not indulging our mood, once we're looking into the nature of our own awareness, what we then do is realize our complete identification with that awareness. Not with what we're aware of, but with the awareness itself. This is the supreme identity. This is the principle of Ishvara taken to its ultimate conclusion. And this is the dynamic of enlightenment practice once again. We're not getting caught up in our moods. We've dealt with our moods. We're looking now to our true awareness, the nature of our awareness. This is samadhi, this is enlightenment. And we realize, we appreciate it. We appreciate the nature of this awareness as the supreme identity. It's what we ultimately identify with. This is sadhana.